I'm Charlotte, and you are watching The Ugly Atheist. In today's episode, I'm going to go over some rants that I've had, and these were just kind of selected at random. Rants about Christianity and other things that have sort of seemed kind of annoying. But these are just my opinions, things that are concerning to me, so take these with a grain of salt, and let's get into it. The first one, number one, why do Christians try so hard to create rational explanations for the claims in the Bible? So, if it's true that you're saved by faith and not by sight, salvation is all about faith. It's not about a rational understanding of anything, according to Christian doctrine. Then why do Christians spend so much energy and time trying to rationalize the events in the Bible? The crossing of the Red Sea, creationism, Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden, Noah's Ark. These are all things that I've heard many apologists try to rationalize and remove all faith from the equation. They've even made a life-size ark out there in Kentucky, I think, to try to demonstrate that all the animals could indeed fit in the ark. And they go through painstaking detail to outline how the care of these animals would have happened, how they collected these animals. If you're trying to remove faith from the equation, that makes me wonder, it seems like you're defeating the point of salvation. If you remember the story of doubting Thomas, and he said, I'm not going to believe until I get credible evidence. He wanted to put his finger into the side of Christ and feel his wounds. And what did Jesus say to him? He said, you believe because you have seen, but blessed are those who believe and have not seen, or something to that effect. So, because doubting Thomas required some evidence before he could believe, he received a lesser blessing, or perhaps no blessing at all for believing. There's no virtue in believing when you see evidence, according to Christian doctrine. So you have these people, these apologists, who are trying hard to rationalize all the events in the Bible. You're essentially creating just a ton of unblessed converts, So I don't know what happens in heaven to unblessed converts, people who believe based on evidence versus based on just faith. Just taking that leap of faith, that childlike faith. But it's clearly a lesser demarcation, a lesser level of blessedness if you require evidence. And the other thing is that if apologists are spending so much time trying to rationalize or defend the indefensible, then it kind of is... it can come across as insulting to people's intelligence, because you're trying to it's like you're trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes. Like, I know it seems like this, but it's not like this because of this reason and that reason. Like for Noah's Ark, all the evidence says that there was not a worldwide flood. There is localized floods, but there was no worldwide flood. But so for an apologist to try to convince someone that there really was a worldwide flood, despite the evidence, then that's like an insult to people's intelligence, I would think. I mean, it's like you're trying to tell me that this mythology is true, and you've got these reasons that aren't reasons for why. I don't know. It's insulting to people, I think, who value evidence. So let's move on to the next one. This one's about atheists. I come across atheists, people who say they're atheists all the time, who say that they are spiritual. And I don't understand how that's a thing, because like these these atheists will delve into, they'll listen to Deepak Chopra. Is that his name? They'll delve into a lot of Eastern mysticism and pagan practices, and they'll claim to be atheist. But what it doesn't make sense, why it doesn't make sense to me is that the same criteria by which you can dismiss the existence of a deity, you can use that exact same criteria to dismiss any and all supernatural claims. So if somebody says they're an atheist yet they're spiritual, that is, for all intents and purposes, that is an oxymoron. That's an impossibility. Or it just demonstrates that you don't think things through. You don't think deeply about your claims, the claims that you're making. At least that's my opinion on that. So if you're an atheist and you think you're spiritual, either you're not really spiritual or you're not really an atheist, because they don't seem to be congruent. So here's another one that irks me. Why do Christians and Muslims prioritize philosophy over actual human lives? Like, anytime if you're a believer and you find yourself mistreating somebody because they're not a believer, or they engage in a behavior that your particular philosophy marks as sinful or depraved or whatever, and I think you have lost the plot. There's no place where it is okay to mistreat a human being because of a particular type of thinking that you've adopted tells you to do it. That is absolutely unacceptable. Christians and Muslims do it all the time. Gays are, for example, that is a practice that is frowned upon in Islam and in Christianity. And so as a result, oftentimes gay people find themselves mistreated by either religion, members of either religion. I think that the rule of thumb, if you're a believer and you've adopted the stance that certain behaviors are wrong or whatever, the most you should do is tell yourself you're going to pray for that person, treat them with the same kind of love that you would treat anybody else, and resist the temptation to mistreat those people, because you're not going to win any converts if you mistreat somebody. Like, if you don't, what's that news story where the guy didn't want to bake a cake for the gay couple because it was against his religious belief. I bet that if you made the cake anyway and just prayed for those people and perhaps become their friend and maybe win them over to your side that way through friendship, kindness, and love, as opposed to drawing a line in the sand and making people feel judged and threatened and afraid. If you are the source of somebody's fear and somebody's trepidation, then you are not practicing your religion the way that it should be practiced. I know in the Old Testament, God commands the killing of all kinds of people, but we'll just pretend like, New Testament times are different, and hopefully you're not inspired by the book of Joshua to go out and start killing people that or what do they say now, unaliving people that you disagree with. So and I think anytime you put a philosophy over a real, legitimate human life, you are in the wrong. You're on the wrong side of that equation. Okay, so let's do another one here. So this one's pertaining to the people who claim to have the gift of prophecy. What I don't understand, let me phrase it this way. What I don't understand is why people who claim to have the gift of prophecy not understand at all that they're using the same mental tricks that people who claim to be psychics use. It's all observation based, and it's intuitive in the sense that when you see somebody approaching you and you get a word of knowledge, as they say, about that person, you may be intentionally or not even or inadvertently employing these tricks, which are you look at the kind of clothes they're wearing, the kind of car they drive, their mannerisms, how they hold themselves, how their hygiene. There's a ton of different factors that a psychic or a someone who thinks that they can see the future about a person that they take into account. And 90 most of the time these guesses are going to be correct, because humans in normal society only differ in slight amounts and in fringe issues, but for the majority of us have similar lives. We go to work, we love our families, we have similar hobbies depending on where you're from. So most of the human existence in society and in any given community, most of the people are going to be largely the same. So, and there have been lots of people who try to debunk the psychics by using these same techniques, and they successfully debunk the practice of being a psychic. And similarly, they, or by extension, they debunk the idea of being a prophet. Prophets and psychics both speak in generalities, and they look for nonverbal cues from the subject that helps them validate the direction they're going. Like if they say, "Oh, you look like you work in an office," and then the person might sort of nod or smile or something, and then the prophet or the psychic will pick up on that smile and know that they've said something correct, and so they'll go farther down. What are some other stereotypes that people who work in office face? There's office politics, office gossip, vying for different positions, and so the prophet might say, "And there's a position you've been vying for at work, and I'm getting a word of knowledge. God says you're going to get that. You're going to get that. Amen. You're going to get that promotion." And so, of course, the subject is just all excited, and that just feeds it more. And the other thing that's interesting about humans is that even if not 100% of the things align with us, we ignore the 10 to 20% that is completely off base. But because most of it was right, we'll say, "Oh, that prophet was so legit. That psychic was so legit." So anyway, my next one, this one's kind of funny. So in 1 Corinthians, it says that God's not the author of confusion. And this is something that always bugged me, because then Jesus taught primarily in parables, which is almost by definition confusing, because a parable is a story with multiple meanings, and if you have multiple people hearing a parable, they will come away with different things, and they won't always agree. So that's going to lead to perhaps heated discussion and definitely confusion over what the meaning is. And so you can't claim to not be the author of confusion and then proceed to teach lessons using parables, because then you are definitely the author of confusion. So I have one additional rant, and this one's not about religion or atheism. This is just a general observation I've noticed lately. We've been I know language changes. Language is very fluid. It changes from decade to decade, century to century. But this newest trend is just kind of bugs me. It's the idea that people keep adding an S to words that are already plural. For example, I'm hearing people say maths instead of math. Like, "Hey, do the maths." Like, why? Math is already short for mathematics, which is already plural. So you don't need to add an S if you shorten it to math, because it's implied. Um, there's I've heard people do that with data. The word data is already plural. It means a collection of statistics or evidence, um, figures or numbers. And I hear people say, look at the datas. Like, well, you don't need to add you don't need to add the s. And I heard I went to an Adobe Max conference. Well, online I went to it. And one of the presenters was an artist, and she kept referring to her creations as artworks. She's like, I did all these different artworks, and I'm thinking, artwork is already plural. You don't need to add the s. Like, why do they do that? Why? It's like you don't add an s to scaffolding. The word scaffolding means a series of structures to allow one to access higher elevations in a project or something. So you don't say, "Oh, I erected some scaffoldings," because that just sounds stupid. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there, but I do want to make one caveat that these rants are all to be taken with a grain of salt, because I understand these are all kind of first world problems, and in light of all the horrible suffering that most people in the world go through, they're not going to care if we add an S to maths. That's not what's the priority for them, and I respect that. I understand that. So these are just kind of first world rants. So take these again with a grain of salt. These are just me having some fun and voicing my opinion on some superficial matters that are not a huge, big deal in light of the human condition. So anyway, I'm Charlotte, and you have been watching The Ugly Atheist. Thank you for watching, and if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe, and we will see you next week. Thank you.